Hey friends, it's Marie here at Nicole Designs. I thought I'd do a video showing Nuvo's new Crackle Mousse. If you're familiar with their mousse line, they have embellishment mousse, expanding mousse, which is really fun, and I've just added on this Crackle Mousse. So there are 8 new colors, like I'm showing you here. They're more of a pastel vintage type color palette, but I'll show you how you can make your own custom colors if you want to do that. So here's a look at the 8 colors. I've got yellow here twice, so I'm just going to remove one of those, but there are 8 colors in total. You've got your pastels, you've got a white and sort of a black and a gold. So you have that metallic as well. So I have my swatch card here. I've swatched out every color except for white. It didn't fit on my big tag. But you can see that beautiful crackle that happens as these mousse dry. So what I wanted to show you is here at the top, you've got these really big crackles. And if you look at the bottom of each of those swipes, the crackling gets a lot smaller. And you can control that by how thick you put on your paste, your mousse. So here's the green mousse. I'm giving you a look inside the jar. If you're familiar with the mousse, you know it's kind of, well, a mousse consistency. It's a little bit thick and you work with it and it softens up kind of like frosting. Now the crackle paste is a little bit different. It's got more of a, I would say, more of a creamy gel kind of consistency, and you can spread it on using your spatulas or your brush. I'm going to show you both ways and show you what happens, what the difference is. So I'm putting it on with a brush here, a flat brush. I'm trying to make sure it's smooth. And I am getting some of those lines from my bristles in my paste. And then I'm going to take some of this darker color and just use my spatula here. Now you can see that as I'm applying it, it's a much smoother application with this spatula. You're not going to get any of those lines from your bristles, from your paintbrush if you do it this way. And I think this way actually works a little better. And you can control how thick you want to put it on. If you put it on really thick, you're going to get bigger crackles. If you put it on thinner, you're going to get smaller, more even crackles. So you can see here those big crackles at the top. That's where I put some of this mousse on really thick, and down at the bottom it's smaller crackles. So I just wanted to give you a close-up look at that. Now you do have to let this crackle mousse dry on its own. You don't want to take a heat tool to it because that will interrupt the crackling process. So I'm just going to add some more pink here next to my dark, I don't know if it's dark blue or a black. I think it's a black, but I'll have to look at the name again. You can kind of layer them over each other. You can mix them, and I'm getting a little bit of mixing between these 2 colors here. They're still going to crackle just fine, but you can go ahead and mix them together if you want. Now you can see that I've got this mousse on my tag, and it's curling up a little bit. Every time I use it, it seems to curl up, so I think that's just going to be normal with what, it's going to happen when you use this. So like what I like to do is I like to just kind of put something heavy down on my paper on the corners and let it dry. That way it's going to kind of let it dry flat and not crumple up so much. If you use a heavier paper, you're going to get it less curling, and if you use a really thin paper, it's going to curl up quite a bit. So I did mention in the beginning that you can kind of mix your own colors if you want. And I'm going to show you that I'm going to do this with the white Crackle Mousse and some of the Nuvo Shimmer powders. Now, if you're familiar with the shimmer powders, you know that these are kind of a powdered watercolor. You mix them with water, and they kind of burst out with a bunch of colors and some shimmer. Well, you can tap on a little bit of that pigment into your white Crackle Mousse and then just mix it in. I'm sure you could put some pigment in some of the colored ones too, but if you want that, the pigment of what it's going to be from your shimmer powder, you would want to use that with your white mousse. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm making this really light sort of aqua blue using that shimmer powder, just mixing it in there. The shimmer powders do have different specks of color in them. So some of the yellows have speckles of red, some of the purples have gray and silver and gold and different things. So you want to mix it together if you want a really smooth color. But if you like those streaks of color, you can kind of not mix it completely and leave some of those streaks of color in your mousse as well. So you can get a lot of different looks by mixing your own colors, and I think it's really pretty. So I'm using my spatula to apply this to my paper, and this mousse is quite easy to clean up after you're done using it. A lot of times I'll just use a baby wipe and wipe off my spatula, wipe off my glass mat, or if you'd rather, you can always take your tools to your sink and wash with warm soapy water. So I'm using this Sunray Crosette now to mix in with my white Crackle Mousse. This is a new color. This is with the Tropical Paradise trend. So I wanted to use this. It ended up being a really light yellow, but you can maybe kind of see a few streaks of red in there. So these shimmer powders are really fun if you like to get different colors, and if you like to just tap them onto your watercolor paper, spritz them with water, and see the colors that burst out. They're really fun to play with. I just wanted to get it a smooth mix in with my mousse here, so I'm just using my spatula to really kind of scrape it up and just mix it around. If you're having a problem with getting all of this mousse to mix, one thing that I've done is taken my other spatula and used the two of them together to kind of scrape them off of each other and make sure I'm getting all that color mixed in here. So these spatulas are a really handy tool when you're working with different mediums and different pastes and things. I just grab this tool all the time. You can also use a palette knife if you love those as well. So lots of different ways to mix, and if you don't have any of these, you can use a credit card or something similar. So I'm going to go ahead and just put this on my paper as well. Just getting it all put on here, and as I was playing with these colors, it to me started looking like a beach scene, like the water and the sand. So that's kind of where I got the inspiration for my card. I thought I would go ahead and make a fun ocean pirate kind of theme with some stamps that I have in my stash already. So you'll see me do that here in a minute. But once you've got all of your mousse on your paper, like I mentioned before, I like to let it air dry, because if you hit it with your heat tool, it's just going to dry flat. It's not going to crackle. And you really want that crackle, because that's what this mousse does. So here are my colors. I've got them on my paper, and like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to let them air dry. I'm going to set a few of those mousse containers on there so it dries flat. And here are my Crackle Mousse, all dried and crackly. Since I put a thinner, even layer on this paper here, you're going to get those smaller crackles. It's going to give you some really fun texture. And you can see here, between the brush application and the spatula application, you get a lot more crackling with that spatula application. And I think that's because you get a smoother application with those spatulas, and the bristles that leave some of those lines in your mousse actually kind of interrupts the crackling. So you want to think about that when you're applying your mousse. Now I'm going to go ahead and die cut these mixed mousses that I did earlier. I'm going to make a lot of little strips of waves and sand that I can layer together to make a fun card. So you can go ahead and die cut these mousse after they're dry, and it's not going to really mess up the crackle at all. So you can die cut these with letters, shapes, like I'm doing here. I'm making waves to kind of layer them together. So if you're a card maker like me, sometimes these different mediums and different mousse kind of stumps me a little bit, because I feel like they're more suited to mixed media, which I don't do a lot of. So it's fun to find creative ways to put them on cards. Now this part here, this little wave has more of a dark streak in it, and that's because I didn't completely mix that Aqua shimmer in there. But you can see that it really gives you a really different variety of colors if you leave some streaks, and I think it looks really fun. So I'm just taking some of my Nuvo liquid glue, putting it behind some of these wave panels here, and just slipping them in behind each other, kind of varying the waves at the top to make it look like a really fun wavy card. Now this is, I believe it's an A10 size card. It's the long and skinny card. It's basically 9 inches long by 4 inches wide, and this panel that I'm working with is about a 1/4 inch shorter than that on each side. And then I'm going to layer onto my A10 card base. So it's a long and skinny card. I really like these for making some fun scenes like we're doing today. And here are all my crackly panels layered up on my card. It looks like the waves down at the bottom and the sand at the top. Now I mentioned I had a really fun stamp set in my stash. This is from My Favorite Things. It's their little pirate stamp set, and I think it's so cute. I've had these images colored and cut out for a while. I just enjoy sometimes sitting down and coloring when maybe I don't have all the time to create a whole card at once. Sometimes I just like to color my images and cut them out and then keep them on hand for when I have a card like this one that just needed some pirates, and I've got these ready to go. So sometimes if you're lacking a little bit of inspiration or a little bit of time, you can just go ahead and color your images and cut them out if maybe that's all you can do, and then you have those images ready to go when you have a card. So I've placed all of these images on my card in between all of those waves, and I think it's really super cute. So I'm going to mount it on my card base using some of this 2-inch wide foam tape from scrapbook.com. I love this tape because it's nice and wide. I can pop up my card panels on my card bases, give it a little dimension without having to cut tons of strips of foam adhesive or using up all my little foam squares. And it's really easy to pull off the backing paper. It's easy to cut this thinner like I've done here, so I can add another strip on the other side. So it's a really great versatile foam tape to work with. I've really been enjoying it, and it comes in a huge roll, which is a big win. So I've made sure that I'm going to mount this the right way, that my card opens the right way, because I have mounted my cards upside down before. But once this is on here, I'm going to use a few die cut letters and spell out a sentiment, which I didn't get on camera, but you'll see some photos coming up. And that's going to finish the card. So I hope this gives you a look at those Crackle Mousse, some really basic tips on how to get started with them, and maybe add them onto a card of your own. So thanks so much for stopping by. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, like, comment, share, just do all the things, and I'll catch you guys next time. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.